What the hell? Tommo's a minute early. What's going on? Welcome everyone to the live stream. How we doing? Hello, debate, Juve fan, Manuel, Martin, Tommo the GOAT of F1, great name, Curtis, Light Blue Cloud, Ted, Socks, Nosage, Hazardous, Ricciardo, Danvelope, Samuel, Luminal, Rohan, Craigie, Drink Water. Couldn't agree more. Stay hydrated, everyone. Jeff, Minko, Thomas, Ethan, Julian, Dre, CB7, Jacintha, Variety, Javier, Jacob, Mega Prime. Hello, Harsh Vanden. Good to see you, mate. Welcome. Friend of Tommo. Appreciate the support. Buddy. Pharrell. Hello, mate. Welcome, everyone. It's good to be back live streaming. I haven't done a stream for a while, have I? It's been a couple of weeks off. No race this weekend. Didn't do a live stream last weekend. But we're here. I want to do at least one every week. I should have done one last weekend. I'm sorry. From now on, I'm going to try my best to do one every weekend. All right. Even if there's not a race. Yeah, thank you all for coming. And there's a bit to talk about. And part of the reason why I didn't do one last weekend is because there wasn't a huge amount in the news cycle that justified being spoken about. But there's a few stories that have dropped since then that merit a chat, a catch up, all right? A bit, exactly, a bit, just a bit. I miss you all too. Thank you, Marlon. But thank you all for coming. Right. I asked you lot on YouTube community last night if there was anything I was missing, but there's kind of three main subjects we're going to talk about today. And then we'll just kind of spitball it. This is a much more like, obviously I have my kind of plan of action of how I go about my pre and post race streams, and I'll get stuff prepped. And I've got a few bits prepped for this, but not too much because it's more of just sitting chatting, you know. I'm good, RN. I'm good. How are you? Also, I'll grab Minton towards the end. He's sleeping in bed. Hannah's away this weekend. She's gone off on holiday with her mate. So I'm here working alone. Nah, she's going to have a great time. So give your well wishes to Han, the wifey. And should be in the air at the minute, actually. Right, okay, let's crack on. Let's go. Starting with the first piece of news, which is, I'm not going to keep this bit to the end because this is the main piece of news, which it didn't surprise anyone really, did it? But of course, the end of Latifi. Nicholas Latifi will not race at Williams in 2023. Could he get a seat elsewhere? Probably not. But stranger things happened. Have stranger things happened than Nicky getting the Alpine seat? Possibly. Maybe not, though. I'm not too sure. Look, obviously, the fact that I think it's fair to say, right, if you look at someone like Robert Kubica, okay, clearly when he was at his prime, incredible, but since his accident, you know, he has to drive, I think was it like 70% left-handed, 80% left-handed, because of the injuries he's sustained to his other hand. You know, he's got reserve role at Alfa Romeo. He's not the driver he once was. Now, obviously, Latifi has never been at those levels. So, could we see him do a similar reserve kind of role with that Safina money at a team? Look, obviously, Williams is saying he's not going to race. I'm assuming they've confirmed that he's not going to go back to a reserve kind of role, right? He's just fully leaving the team. Could his money keep him in a reserve capacity? Maybe. But I hope for Nicholas's sake, you know, he'll have had 3 years in Formula One. Unfortunately, he's not been able to showcase that he's at the level. But I'm sure he could do a very good job. You know, IndyCar maybe could be an opportunity there in some kind of sports cars. I mean, there's a lot of drivers who have had, you know, quite uninspiring F1 careers who have gone on to have good careers outside. of F1. It's not the be all and end all. So look, I wish him the best. Obviously, like he seems like a cracking bloke, no problem. But you can't. Look, the writing was on the wall. It was always on the wall, even before Monza, and obviously the De Vries performance, such last minute at qualifying him twice basically, because both of his laps went quicker than Nicholas. You know that, and then to convert that result, because obviously, you know, Nicky's starting position wasn't even that bad, but he had such a bad start, and then in the post race seemed to kind of put a lot of it on the car. And you didn't feel like after that result, Latifi, and I get it must be difficult, but he wasn't taking responsibility for what happened, and I think it was clear for everyone to see that, you know, that was the final nail in the coffin of his F1 career, unfortunately, for him. But you know, when you're not delivering the performances, and he's had. That's the thing. Even Latifi's kind of odd moments, it's relative to the standard he was setting. He would, if he did like a not bad job, not even a good job, just not a bad job, then it'd be like, oh, he's done a great. No, like the performances just weren't there. That yes, there were a few. There was like, again, Monza last year. Monza last year was the crowning jewel, I think, in Latifi's. Not even so much Hungary, because obviously in Hungary you had loads of drivers get taken out. He was kind of holding up a train at the start, so benefited from Hungary not being a track you can overtake at. Still held on for points and still finished ahead of George, and, you know, fair enough. But when you deep it, when you look beyond the finishing results, unfortunately it still wasn't a particularly great weekend. Is what it is. Look, drivers like Latifi have come and gone from the sport countless times over the years. You know, we complain about like the whole pay driver phenomenon now. I mean, it used to be a lot worse. Like back in the 90s, you'd get these Donnies knocking up who like haven't got a Scooby what they're doing, and would be, that's the reason the whole 107% qualifying rule exists. Like Latifi is a driver who finished second in Formula 2. Yes, it wasn't the most competitive season, but at the end of the day, like, he still demonstrated capability. But it just wasn't to be, wasn't it? And yeah, I mean, look, whatever the future holds, I'm not too sure. Obviously, you know, I'm sure his dad will be prepared to support him wherever he goes next. You know, there's plenty of racing outside of F1. It's not the be all and end all at the end of the day. And yeah, maybe he wasn't used to this type of car. You know, Williams changing the side pod philosophy kind of midway through the season probably didn't help. But also, you've got to look at that discrepancy between him and Alex. And, you know, I think Alex has, over the course of Alex's career, he's proven that he's like capable. You know, 2019 jumped in as a rookie, came pretty close to Daniel Kvyat, did a better job than Gasly and Red Bull in 2019. Then obviously had the shock in 2020, which you don't need to remind me about. I'm just reminding myself. And 2021 he was out, but like, you look at in F2 relative to Lando and George, and he was like only a few points behind Lando. Like, Alex has proven that he is at least a good F1 driver. At the least, he's proven he's a good F1 driver. Like, and that's not just me being like, I'm not like, I don't think he's better than George. I don't think he's better than Lando, but I think he's proven at least he's a good driver. So for then De Vries to also jump in, who clearly, you know, Nick De Vries has done a lot of testing, a lot of different F1 cars, and, you know, for him to jump in and do such a good job. I know Monza is a track where it's gonna punish weaknesses less, right? So I think for De Vries to jump in at Monza was the perfect track to jump in at. If it had been at Singapore, I think it would have been a very different story. I think he would have been struggling a lot more, Nick De Vries. But Monza, and sad to say, but I think part of the reason why Ricciardo was able to win at Monza last year is A, because that McLaren clearly worked well on that track, and the fact that we saw, you know, it's a 1-2, the only 1-2 of the season, which is mad. That was the only 1-2 of last season, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Yeah, McLaren 1-2. Dog. Spam dog in chat if you don't want to see Minton. Oh look, you're all spamming dog. Okay, you won't see Minton then. Yeah, the fact that Ricciardo was able to pull out that performance in a car that he clearly wasn't comfortable in last year. Showed that Monza doesn't punish you in certain ways. The fact that Latifi was... That's what I thought Latifi was on for a good one. I'll be honest. This year, you all saw my tweets. I thought he was on for a good one this year because he did such a good job last year. Like, he was ahead of George. But I think also Latifi was more comfortable in last year's car. I think why that gap to Albon has been as big as George's, because I think George is better than Alex. I just think that, you know, Nicky's been less comfortable in this car, basically. Cat. But yeah, I mean, I'll knock up a little poll. Let's knock up a little poll. What's next? What? I can't type. What is next for Latifi? So, is it an F1 reserve role? Could like Haas come in and be like, we want your money, so be a reserve? Could it be IndyCar? Could it be sports cars? Or could it be other? Or maybe Formula E? Formula E? Other? I don't know. See what you lot think. If you think WEC, then put other, I guess. Because obviously there's a lot of money coming into World Endurance. Obviously Ferrari coming in. You've got Porsche coming in. You know, you've got Peugeot's new fancy no rear wing car. There's a lot of potential. Most do you think other, actually? Yeah, WEC, IMSA, perhaps. Accounting. Esports. You know what, right? Actually, that was weird. It was really weird, right? So, when the Latifi news broke, I hadn't looked at Twitter. So I only found out about 3 hours after it had broken, right? And again, this isn't... Yeah, it's news, but we all knew it was coming. And, I mean, Williams, their hand was kind of forced, right? They kind of had to after Monza. And the first tweet I saw when I did look at Twitter was from the Williams F1 esports account with Latifi on the Fanatec saying like, sorry to... And I was like, what? Is that... Is he joined the esports team? Like, that was my initial like... And obviously he hasn't joined the esports. Maybe he will. They've gone all in with esports, Williams. They've put a lot of resource, to be fair, though. They're not the only team, though. McLaren's esports facility is insane. I've seen that a couple of times. It's pretty cool. And when was it? What state? On Thursday, I went to Mercedes. I was at Brackley. I got invited by my old mates, 8 Sleep, who the guys who sent me to Miami. And I got to do a little factory tour, which was fun. I got to see the esports facility they got there. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I've seen Tommy's tweet. It is a banger. Check out Tommy WTF1's tweet about Latifi. With it's so good. So 17% of you maybe think an F1 reserve, which again I think, you know, it depends if there's a team that really needs that financial stimulus in the same way that Kubica brings the Orlen, because PK Orlen's a Polish company, and they're a significant sponsor with Alfa Romeo. Does Latifi with Safina, which obviously is not a title sponsor for Williams, but it's the big one on the rear wing, back of the rear wing, which is a significant placement, right? And obviously Lavazza as well. So maybe that could. But I think for Nicky, I would just be like, you know what, I've given it a go. It didn't go particularly well. You know, he's still young. He's 27. How old is Latifi? Latifi is 27. Yeah, 27. There you go. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the future holds for Nicholas. And also, what's I guess kind of quite significant about this is that we haven't had a new driver announced. So we're going to get another poll going. I did ask this on Twitter, but I want to ask you lot as well. So it feels like Williams have got... There's 2 obvious options, right? There's Logan Sargent, who, as things stand, being 3rd in Formula 2, will have enough super license points at the end of the season to get an F1 super license. And we know from the Colton Herta situation that that the FIA are not going to make concessions around super licenses, because if they're not going to for Herta, then even though Sargent is coming through the F2, through that pyramid, they're not going to they can't make a concession for him. But obviously that does depend on how Abu Dhabi goes. So there's a big break now. Basically, there's no more F2 until Abu Dhabi, until the final race of the season. Logan's in a good position. He's got like a 13-point buffer, I think, to Jack Doohan, but then there's about 4 drivers on the same number of points. So if he has a shocker, Logan Sargent, in that final weekend and scores like nil points, and the drivers around him do well, it would take a lot for him to not finish P6 minimum, which he needs for the super license. And then I think also doing a few FP1 runouts, because I think Williams have got 1 more left, and I'm sure they could find a way to make it work if Logan finished P6 in Formula 2. We'll see. And then obviously Nick De Vries is a huge option as well, because we've seen him perform in that car. He's got that relationship. He's got that Mercedes relationship, as well as that relationship now with Williams. He's tested the Aston Martin as well. He's still only 27 as well. Is he 27? How old's Nick De Vries? Yeah, he's also 27. So they're the 2 most obvious options. Then, of course, there's the Mick Schumacher conversation. Talks of him leaving Haas, which we'll see. We'll talk about it in a bit. So I'm going to poll you lot. So what should Williams do? So I wish I was a 27 merchant. Unfortunately, I'm a 29, almost 30 merchant. What should Williams do? So jump on De Vries now. Wait it out for Sargent. Get Mick in, or other. Just go for Mick or other. Because obviously, Mick Schumacher, if he became available, could be an interesting shout for sure. So I'll be honest, I'm surprised that Schumacher is probably gonna be leaving Haas, kind of. I guess, am I? Yeah, I think Haas's expectations. They've got K-Mag now. I think Schumacher's getting better. I think he's clearly moving in a positive direction. I don't know. Like for me, I think Mick's had he's had a hard time of it this year. I think that gap between that ultimate pace gap between him and K-Mag hasn't been that big. I really don't think it has. I think he's made his mistakes, sure. The high profile ones, Monaco, Saudi Arabia, and Haas is I think there's a wider conversation around Haas, but we'll have that later. But it is interesting they haven't announced the replacement yet. So jump on De Vries now. Throw the kitchen sink at De Vries to get him in. But also potentially, Nick De Vries has now orchestrated by doing such a good job at Monza and having so many FP, he's the all reliable now with FP1 sessions. Have kind of orchestrated options for himself, which good for him. And I think Nick De Vries owes it to himself, because Williams is the second / worst car on the grid, right? Probably, all told. He owes it to himself to, if there was an opportunity at AlphaTauri or Alpine, he owes it to himself to consider it, But I guess we'll see. Jump on De Vries now. 59% of you think that they should just go for De Vries, which, as much as I am a big Logan fan, I love Logan Sargent. He's my favourite F2 driver. I don't know. There's a compelling argument both ways, isn't there? Because obviously De Vries, you can get in. You've got, he's clearly a driver who He's good. He's well considered in Formula One, like in the paddock, should I say? Even though it would be his rookie season. I just think that Logan's got a great potential there. But it depends if Williams... The thing Williams need to be cautious of is that they're not a competitive team right now. They can't fight at the front. So any young driver who comes into Williams is probably looking elsewhere long term, right? If Sargent joins Williams, he's probably in his mind, he's like, okay, get a couple of seasons, do really well at Williams, then maybe get snapped up by, a bigger team, be that a McLaren or an Alpine, or even like a Mercedes or a Red Bull, whatever, right? Williams isn't that end goal team. That they are a stepping stone team, in the same way that Haas is a stepping stone team. AlphaTauri is by definition a stepping stone team. So you do wonder, what's in it for? Because obviously Russell went to Williams, but that was because Williams were considering getting rid of Russell. Remember that as well, because it was a stepping stone team for George. He was never going to stay at Williams. So I think they need to consider that as well, and maybe taking on someone like a De Vries, who's a bit older. He's not old, he's in prime years in terms of career. Maybe that is a more sensible decision. I don't know. It's a tricky one. I think they're getting good drivers regardless, whether it's Sargent or De Vries. I think both point to proof and all that. But yeah, by Latifi. But it's not all sad news, because where Latifi will be leaving and not racing in F1, or at least at Williams in 2023, Yuki Tsunoda will. I'm happy about this. You know I like Yuki. You know I've got a lot of time for Yuki. I was there in Canada when he bozoed into the wall. He's had his moments, but I think his ultimate pace has been way closer to Gasly than it was last year. I think that AlphaTauri is a difficult car, and I think that it's still his second season. He's had a year and a half in it, just over a year and a half now in F1, and I think the potential is high. I think there's a positive future for Yuki Tsunoda, but I want to know what you think. So, does Tsunoda deserve his extension? I'm asking you lot. So, I'm going to give you 4 options. So, a hell yeah, if you're like, big up Yuki, on the Yuki train. A sure, not convinced, or a F no. Right, what do you lot think? Are you very pro? Are you cool? Yeah, nice. Are you not really? Or are you absolutely not? Because again, I think he's had some poor luck. He's also made some quite embarrassing mistakes, but he's also, I think he's got 6 head-to-heads over Pierre in qualifying. I think he's demonstrated some solid races. I think there's enough there for Red Bull to be patient. And I think given the fact that I think if there were more exciting talents in that Red Bull pool, then potentially Yuki's a bit more at risk. But I'm not surprised they gave him another year. I think he's merited. I think he's earned another year. I think there's still the shunts in him. There's still the incidents in him. But I think he's done enough to merit a bit more time to continue to develop. And I guess, look, I think long term, especially with Checo's recent struggles, I think that Red Bull are looking for a driver that can. Red Bull aren't just looking for a good driver in that second seat. They're looking for the problem for Red Bull, right, is that, and there was a great video from the race that they put out earlier today, which I think illustrated Sergio Perez's struggles really well, is that, you know, Red Bull want a second driver that can support in the way that a Barrichello supported a Schumacher, right, back in the day. Because Max is their present and is their future. But also, it is concerning that Checo is falling more and more off relative to Max, because the car development's going in a certain direction. Red Bull need a driver who can drive a car that Max likes. I guess that's what ultimately they're looking for, aren't they? They're looking for a driver that can, that their driving style almost. It's almost like Red Bull need to kind of manufacture a new Verstappen. It's like they need to, because they have developed this very pointy car which works for him, but no one else can seem to drive it, basically. And maybe Ricciardo, like you say that, but also I think towards the end we did see that, and part of the reason he left is because he felt that, you know, the preference was moving more towards Max, and maybe the car setup was moving more towards Max as well. But the thing is, with Red Bull's driver academy, they're not looking to nurture someone. They're looking for someone who's like already at that level, and they just financially support them and give them opportunities. They're not looking to nurture someone. But the thing is, where Max is so quick and has such a freakish and unusual driving style with the super edgy nose and all that, that's where they're kind of coming unstuck. Is Tsunoda that guy? Is Tsunoda that guy who can jump into that role in a few years? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know enough about Yuki's driving style, but I guess, you know, AlphaTauri knows how he drives. I think you look at Verstappen's career, you know, and he was like Crashtappen. Those memes existed for a reason, because he used to have a lot of shunts. But his raw pace was there. Now, do I think Tsunoda's raw pace is the same as Max Verstappen's early raw pace? No. But could it be? Maybe. It's easy to scoff at that idea now, but you don't know how things will change over time, and he's still very young. How old's Tsunoda? Yeah, he's still only 22. I don't know about you, but Tsunoda's 22. So, yeah. We will see. But obviously all the talk around... well, because now AlphaTauri have technically now confirmed both their drivers for next year. But obviously there's a lot of talk about Gasly potentially leaving and a potential way out, and De Vries potentially coming in. I don't think we're going to hear too much more about driver contract stuff for the foreseeable now. This is where at like 3 p.m. today there's an announcement. I think that we're a way off that. Just because what's the rush? What's the rush for Williams? Okay, the rush for Williams is to get De Vries signed down. But what's the rush for De Vries, I guess? Because Williams can offer De Vries like a really good contract. And he can just be like, you know what, I'm just going to wait. Because I'm going to do this little Alpine test. And I'm going to, you know, speak to Haas and speak to whoever. AlphaTauri and blah, blah, blah. So there's no rush on De Vries' end, because it feels like he's a man in demand. And then obviously Alpine are doing Alpine's Got Talent at the minute, so they're not in any particular rush. And I guess AlphaTauri, they'll have someone they could promote a Liam Lawson. They could promote and Liam's probably seems like the most likely with the Red Bull talent pool at the minute. I think Owasa's a bit too hit or miss, even though I think his raw pace is great. Hauger's not set the world alight as much as an F3 champion. You know, there was an expectation there, I think, which maybe was too difficult. No, and you're right. De Vries, like 27 years old, is not old for an F1 driver. It's old by modern standards to start at 27 is quite old, but the reality is it's not actually that old. Oh, come come on, it's not. Like, how old was when Lewis made his rookie debut? He was 22, wasn't he? I'm sure someone in chat can clarify that. He was definitely in his 20s. We just like assume drivers need to make their debut when they're like 12. Was he 24? Was it 22? We've got a few different numbers. Can someone check, please? Whatever. 29. But yeah, Tsunoda stays, and I'm happy about that. And most of you, 77% are either short or hell yeah. There's a reasonable not convinced, and I get that. But he was 9. Brilliant. Okay, we can talk about contracts later anyway. For other drivers and teams like Mick Schumacher and all that. But before we talk any more about driver contracts, we have to talk about the third and final big chunk of news that's come out recently, which of course is the 24 race calendar for 2023, starting at Bahrain on the 5th of March, ending on the 26th of November at Abu Dhabi. Is 24 too many? Let's get a poll going. Is 24 races too many? Yes or no? Simple question. Simple question, simple answer. Boom. Let me know what you think. Because there's kind of two main points, I think, around this, right? Which point A is that, having 24 races of, 52 weekends in a year. Does the sport need that many? Does it become a bit too much? Don't get me wrong, like, most F1 fans are going to be watching all these 24 races. But is it a necessity from a viewing point of view? Is it just to squeeze as many in? Because we are now at the cap of what's allowed in the Concord Agreement, no more than 24 races, and we are now at 24. You feel like that cap was always, it wasn't a cap, it was a target for F1 to get to, because more races means more money, means more happy stakeholders, means how can I become a stakeholder in F1? Because they're going to be making bank, mate. 66% if you say yes, 34% if you say no. So not everyone thinks it's too many. And you know what, that kind of first argument, I get it, but also, like, sure. I mean, that still leaves most weekends where there is no F1. Well, it's 28 other weekends, in a year. And we get, no F1 in December, all of January, all of February, because they've kept it as well. Because this year they're ending the season in November because of the World Cup, right? Because they didn't want to clash with the World Cup, and the World Cup's in Qatar and it's in December. Yeah, that's what I mean. I want to know. I know it's not publicly traded, so how do I get in? Stefano, let me know. So, they've done that again for next year. I'm not 100% sure why, but yeah, there's that argument, which I get it, but also, we have football is on most weekends. Like people are going to watch it, so I don't think that's too much of a, like, sure, if there was 20 races, then I'd have 4 more weekends where I'm not, tied to F1 and I can go on holiday or I can do other things and all that. But also I love the sport. Like, I'm massively, as a content twat myself, right? I'm massively privileged to be in the position I am. I'm not going to sit here and moan, oh, there's too many races, that means I can't, imagine. But I get the point that, people have things to do at weekends, and if there's F1 all the time, blah blah blah, right? I get that, but also I don't really conscribe to that. I think the other issue, and it's clearly an issue, and again, there was a really, whose video was it? Aidan, my boy Aidan Millward's. Check his channel out, Aidan Millward. and he did a really good video talking, and there was like an anonymous interview given with one of the someone who works for one of the F1 teams, basically. And honestly, like even having been at Mercedes on Thursday, like, and it was really busy because they were putting together Lewis and George's cars in the race bays, because it's mad. They like put the cars together, they assemble the cars, and then to make sure everything's there, and only people with armbands. They have like, like security guards at clubs when they have the yellow armband, in the UK anyway, to prove that they're security and they're legit. Well, only mechanics with these armbands were allowed to work on the car, because it's like to make sure that, okay, if anything's missing or wrong, they know, okay, they can trace back to who's responsible, why it happened, and then sort it out. And there was like so many people about, and it was like crazy busy, because obviously coming up to Singapore, they need to get all that stuff sorted ASAP. And then you go to the tracks and you're working 12-hour days. Look, it's a privilege to work in F1, no question, right? To be part of a team, that is an incredible job that loads of people would love to have. But also, what I will say is that, and I think this is the case for most jobs, you look at a position like that and you see all of the traveling around the world, you see all of the, being like getting to know the drivers, you see all that stuff, and you think, oh my god, it's like the dream job. No. But it neglects, just like social media does, right? You show the highlights. Those are the highlights of the job, but you're working 12-hour consecutive days, you're flying around the world, so you're dealing with jet lag all the time. There's loads of very human problems with a 24 race calendar as things stand at the minute. I've spoken to numerous people at teams, even like, again, when I was at Mercedes on Thursday, like there was a Q&A session with, I can't remember the guy, Dr. Luke, someone. He's like works at Mercedes as their kind of, he's a doctor, and he deals with, he's not like, Daniel Ricciardo's got all the drivers, so like Lewis has got Angela, like PT, someone to help with nutrition, all that stuff. I don't know why the words are evading me today, but Mercedes employs someone to kind of do a similar job to make sure the drivers are eating right and taking care of themselves, as well as the team. And he was asked about this, and obviously the team are treating it very much as like it's it's 2 more races than this year, which doesn't sound like a lot, and they can make small changes to optimize, because it's important for the teams, for all these human beings to be working at an optimal level, right? You can't have pit crews who are walking around like zombies because they haven't slept for 3 days and then just like messing up. Like, these members of staff need to be operating at an optimal level. So I think from a health point of view, there clearly needs to be more done. We've heard this story far too often from the people who actually know what they're talking about, and not just people on Twitter saying like, oh yeah, but they have a great job, so they shouldn't complain, they should just do it. Like, that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous assertion to make, because this is 24 races is more than this sport has ever had. Like, it used to be 16. That was like the norm back in the day. 16 races, 8 fewer than what we've got now. And I think that there's that human level. Sure, like when you sign up to the job, you sign up to be away from family. The thing is though, right? Imagining your job, and you've signed up for like you've been at I don't know, Williams for like 20 years, right? You signed up and it's like, all right, 16 weekends a year, you're flying around the world, the rest you're working at the factory. You're still working. You're not only working when you're at the track, you're working when you're at the factory, like 8-hour shifts, like 9 to 5, whatever. But all of a sudden, like, more and more weekends are getting taken away from you. As the calendar increases, you've got a husband, a wife, kids, responsibilities. Like, you can't, like, there must be a solution. There must be something that F1 can include into the cost cap if they're going to keep raising the races, because these people don't get paid more. Like, you're paid for a job, and all of a sudden, like, you've got to give 8 more weekends of your life away when you can't go to family events, you can't, spend time with your partner and your kids. Like, why can't we? There must be a solution. We shouldn't just sit here and be like, oh, we'll just deal with it. That's the way it is. Why? Why do we just have to sit with it and deal with that? Because that's the way it is. Why? This is a human-made sport. F1 doesn't exist in nature. So, I'm sorry. I just think, like, there has to be a solution. Whether it's, again, accounting into the cost cap of, like, having to have a minimum number of team personnel. Because these are skilled people as well. You can't just, like, hire anyone for these roles. And more people all the time are quitting, leaving, because there's just no work-life balance, and that's important. So I just think that from that point of view, if they can find a way to sort this, whether it's, again, mandating that you can't have the same pit crew doing blah blah blah, right? Because there's 3 triple headers in this. There's 3 triple headers. Where's it? Where's the first one? There's 3 in here. Well, it's the USA, Mexico, Brazil one. That's the killer. Because they're like not short flights. You know what I mean? Europe is a bit more, because it can all be done like via kind of haulage, freight, and it's shorter flights. It's still tough. Yeah, but you can't just say it's called a job. Like, yeah, so what? Every job should be people working 24/7. We wouldn't accept that, would we? Like, oh, you're getting paid, you have to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You wouldn't accept that. There's clearly a line, and this is sport. We don't have to, like, why would you sit there and be like, oh, it's just a job, deal with it, when we can make it better? Why can't we just make it better for everyone, so everyone's happy? Why can't we just do that? Why not? Yeah, it's just silly. And F1 could, if they actually cared about the health of their staff, they would do something about this and mandate some kind of, all right, you have alternating pit crews each weekend. You can't work more than a certain amount of hours, because they have done some things. Granted, they have done some things, but also, like, they can do more, and that's the biggest issue. I think if they sort that out, honestly, I think the drivers, I'm less, the drivers, they go to the sim every now and then, but then they live a much more privileged lifestyle. They have their private jets. They have... I'm not so concerned about the drivers. I'll be honest, I'm not. Because it's the team personnel who are, flying economy. They're working 12-hour shifts. They're the ones who are really grafting, all right? Sure, it's tough on the drivers as well, don't get me wrong. But it's the personnel who are really getting hung out to dry here, which I think's. But I don't think it's a salary thing either. Like, yeah, I mean, they get paid okay, but I don't think it's even throwing more money at people isn't going to make a difference. Like, invest that money in hiring more people, mandating that you hire more people to cover those kind of roles, and make it so that you're not dealing, like, burnout is a necessary evil. Like, on the 5th of November, after Brazil, like, a significant portion of the entire working populace in Formula 1 is going to be severely burnt out in terms of pit crews and that. So again, it's a sport. This is entertainment. This is entertainment in a day. It's sport, right? Like, we can make this work. It should be better than what it is. And yes, it was meant to be regionally grouped as well. That was the other thing as well. So, like, we're flying from we're going Baku to Miami, back to Italy, and then Canada, like, a few weekends after. Now, obviously, my understanding, I think Autosport put a video out about this. I was watching a bit of it earlier. Obviously, a lot of these races, the contracts have already been signed. So, in terms of moving dates around, you've also got to consider time of year. So, for example, if you go to Belgium, if we went to Belgium earlier on in the year, it'd probably be like snowing, and you just wouldn't have a race. Yeah, but Avijoy, you're not getting 3 months off. You're like, when these people work, like, yeah, they have a bit of time off after Abu Dhabi, but also like after Abu Dhabi, you have the postseason test, so you're not even straight off after Abu Dhabi. Then you have, oh mate, you might have a bit of time off for Christmas, but then back in January, you're straight back to work. And like, yeah, when you're at the factory is more of a normal job, right? But when you're at the track, you have 3 months of the year, right? Let's say 4 months of the year. Let's be generous, right? 4 months of the year where you're working a normal 9 to 5. But then you have 5 months of the year on top of that where you're working 12-hour shifts, flying around the world. No, but Alex, you can't possibly seriously think that. Alex, if you think that, you need to listen to what these people are saying. The whole, if you don't like the job, you don't have to do it, is bollocks. I'm sorry, it's fucking bollocks. It's completely disregarding the factual nature of the issue. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But anyway, it annoys me. It annoys me. It annoys me because so many people have spoken about this, and it's like, it's just disregarding people. Oh, because they work in F1 and they signed up for the job. Make it better. Why can't we make it better? But there you go. But yeah, in terms of the grouping, I think I like to think we'll get there eventually if F1 are serious about the environmental footprint. But we'll see. We'll see. I think 20. We could make 24 work, but more needs to be done. That's the long and the short of it. Right. Let's go back to main screen now. What other things do we have to talk about? Mick Schumacher, I guess. I am kind of right. So I'm gonna do another poll. I'm muted. Hello. Sorry, I knocked my microphone. If I just like touch this microphone, it goes off for some reason. I accidentally clicked no. No means yes. Right. So you know what I was saying earlier about Williams. So if they say Logan Sargent, right, they develop him and he becomes a really good driver, you know, in a couple of years, I don't think Williams are going to be competitive enough, quick enough to keep hold of him because a bigger team will just snap him up, right? Now, with Haas, I do wonder if this whole Mick leaving, because honestly, like, I think relative to Magnussen, I think Mick has done enough to earn a seat next year. K-Mag's been impressive since he jumped in. Obviously, this is a man with a lot of F1 experience. Yes, he had a year out, but he still had a lot of F1 experience. And jumping into these new cars as well, it's a learning curve for everyone. So I think, you know, this year was a good year to jump in if you hadn't been racing the previous year. Yes, Mick's had his incidents, and I get that. And I think for a team like Haas, that's a real killer. Because, like, they don't have the budget. They're not at the cost cap like most other teams are. Or at least as far as we know. And again, what's in it for Haas to develop a young talent like a Schumacher to be potentially pretty good if he's just going to get snapped up? Instead, do they look at the situation, look at their car, look where they are, and be like, you know what? Let's just take a Hulkenberg. because that, like, Nico Hülkenberg is being seriously suggested. I mean, again, the race talking about this, they put him as their most likely prediction to be in that Haas seat for next year. Thank you, Atid, for the $5. If Mick didn't have the surname Schumacher, he'd be working in Lidl. That is funny, but that is also harsh. I don't think that's true, but thank you, Atid. No, you know what? I think the pace has been broadly pretty close to where he needs it to be, in my opinion. But again, I just think, is this having a K-Mag and a Magnussen, a K-Mag and a Magnussen, and a Hulkenberg, even though, they're both not, they're not juniors by any stretch of the imagination, but do you need that? Like, as a lower team working way up, having that experience and two drivers who have lots of experience in Formula 1 can help push that car and develop it so that you can get to a stage where you do have a competitive car, and then maybe that's the time to get in these young juniors who you can build up and make part of the team and conquer the world with, So, yeah, I think that for me, I reckon that if Mick does lose his seat, I think it's more to do with that, because Red Bull can afford to have a junior like Max Verstappen when he jumped in and was writing off cars every other week. Not literally, but he had Verstappen for a reason, right? They could afford to let him get that out of his system and grow, because they're Red Bull, big team. He's not going anywhere. Like, they signed him down, and then they gave him that time to work through those incidents and become a more complete driver, which he is now. But Haas can't afford to do that with a young driver. They literally can't afford to do that. They don't have the cash there. And on top of that, even if they did let Mick, all right, yep, if you write it off every other weekend, but then the weekends you're not writing it off, you're finishing sick, someone else is just going to snap him up. So what's the long-term game there? That's what I think the biggest factor is, in my opinion, in all that. 68% of you think he has done enough. 32% think no. Yeah, Mick's battle with Latifi was a quality, wasn't it? It was like the highlight of Monza. He outperformed. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Mick has outperformed K-Mag on a few occasions, which you can't overlook that. So, but also, I think Hulkenberg would do a really good job. Like, people, he didn't get a podium. Well, that's it. We're just going to define that. That's it. His career, that's it. He just didn't get a podium. That's it. Finished. Come on. Like, there's way more to Nico Hulkenberg than not getting the podium. I think he would do a very good job. He could jump in straight away. He's got that experience. He's got that adaptability. I think he would do a good job. And I think that... Do I think he's the most exciting choice? Of course not. But it depends what Haas are looking for. And these teams are not going to be motivated by just pure, pace or pure potential. It's a mixture. It's a massive... And different teams, like a Red Bull, are going to have different considerations to a team like a Haas at the end of the day. But we'll see. I hope Mick keeps his seat. But at the same time, I don't think he's done enough to go to an Alpine, which is definitely an upgrade from where he's at the minute. Could a Williams be on the cards if they can't get De Vries? And I think that only happens if they don't get De Vries, which I think could happen. Or if... So if that happens, and if Sargent somehow has a shocker in Abu Dhabi and doesn't get the super license points, then maybe Schumacher to Williams, because then he'd be going into his third season. Again, I think it'd be interesting to see how he'd stack up against Alex as well. But yeah, don't Hulkenberg and Magnussen hate each other? Well, look, Magnussen told Hulkenberg to suck his balls. I mean, I've said way worse to my mates, and we're still mates. So, do I think it's that deep? No. Is it funny? Yes. Is it iconic? Yes. But I don't actually think it's that deep, in my opinion. I don't know the guys, but I very much doubt it's that deep. Right, what else? What else should we talk about? So, yeah, Schumacher. Give my thought on Schumacher. What are we saying, chat? I'm happy to chill for a bit longer. If you got any Checo's performance, yeah, that's a good point, Drago. Yeah, look, I've said this. I've said this on records a few times now. I worry long term for Red Bull that they're almost going to be, if they can't find another driver who can drive a Max Verstappen set up car anywhere near Max, they're just going to have to accept this, I think. Because, you know, Gasly couldn't do it, which, okay, he hadn't had that much experience in F1, fair enough. Albon couldn't do it, which again, he hadn't had that much experience in F1, so fair enough. But Gasly and Albon have gone on to prove that they are very capable, okay? Not world beaters, but very capable. And then Sergio, who's had all this experience, has 2020 was arguably the best driver on the grid. If even he can't adapt to it, then maybe Red Bull just have to accept that they're going to be this Schumacher Barrichello team where they just get this car set up for Max, and then whoever's the second driver is just going to have to deal with it, and they're going to have to try and find someone who can drive a car like that is set up in that way, because that's kind of their only option, because they've got, you know, Max in that. We say at the minute like the Red Bull's the best car, and it feels like the Red Bull is the best car, but no, it's Max's Red Bull with Max in it is the best car, because compared to Mercedes where George and Lewis is definitely on top of George at the minute, but they're much closer. Sainz and Leclerc, Ferrari, Leclerc's on top for sure, but Sainz is much closer. Like compared to Checo and Max, who are like a long way apart now. Like their average qualifying delta has been huge these last few races. So from a drivers' championship, which ultimately that's the thing that really matters. I know teams talk about the constructors and that's important, but no one remembers constructors' championships. It's drivers' championships that are remembered, and they've got a man in Max Verstappen and a car in that Red Bull that together it's just something special, honestly. Something very, 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 very special. Lewis is definitely on top of Jules. This like second half of the season, like this first half, Jules was on top, but also Lewis was like they were using him as the test bed for all these setups on this weird W13, and I think that reflects in the difference. But since then, Lewis has been clear of George, no doubt, no question. You can see how much he's closed up that points delta. But yeah, I worry. Do I worry for Checo? The thing is, I think Red Bull have to look at this situation and be like, look, this happened with Gasly, this happened with Albon, it's now happening with Perez. Like last year, Perez did slightly better. This is, look into the data, crunch the numbers, look at the gaps, look at the average points gap, all right? Perez last year, relative to Verstappen, was better, but not much better than Albon relative to Verstappen in 2020. Facts. That is a fact, okay? But I just feel like this was inevitably going to happen. Like, Perez was always going to be closer to Max at the start of the year because, you know, these are new cars and it's a fresh sheet for everyone. But as soon as Red Bull start to dial that car towards the way Max likes it, that gap will open up again, and that's exactly what's happened. That's exactly what's happened. It's not over. No, Stefan. It's looking at looking at the points delta as well, finishing positions. But of course, because Alex said they raced me so hard, then that's it. That's done. That's it. That's the only variable you need to consider. That's it. He said that line and that's it. Everything else goes out the window. That's the important thing, is because he said they raced me so hard, which is a great meme, to be fair. Yeah, no, it must be frustrating for Checo, because obviously at the start there was a glimmer and you felt like he was able to, but as that car's moved more towards Max's very freakish style, which is freakishly good. It seems to have fallen away, which is a shame. Drogovic, Aston Martin, happy for him. Least he deserves. Obviously, yes, if you're in your third season of F2, Nick De Vries won in his first season, didn't get an F1 seat, and I think if you don't win in two, Schumacher won in two, is very. You don't carry that same clout with your name. But what I will say is that Drogovic is still only 22. He's still very young. He jumped into F2 at a very young age. Aston Martin have given him a reserve role. I'm excited to see how they're able to, develop him. Could we see Drogovic stroll down the line? Because Alonso is, of course, jumping in. He's got 2 seasons minimum at Aston Martin from 2023, 2024. Are Aston Martin considering Drogovic as a long-term replacement for Fernando when he does eventually? Because he will have to, at some point, he has to stop. Fernando can't keep going forever, all right? So when he does eventually, we'll see. We'll see. But also, again, the Drogovic is 20. No, he's not. He's 22, isn't he? Felipe Drogovic is 22. Yeah, he's 22. Born in 2000. You tell Alonso. But yeah, it's we'll see. We will see. But I'm hopeful. Felipe seems like a good guy. Well, what else? Got to talk about Fernando racing. Yeah, mate. Look, maybe he is actually an android. De Vries won in his 3rd season. Yeah, I know. That's what I said, didn't I? De Vries won in his 3rd season. Schumacher won in his 2nd season. But Drogovic won in his 3rd season as well. Yeah, I've already talked about the Tsunoda contract extension. Max and Lewis in equal cars. Who wins? That's if it's in Max's sit car this year, Max wins. If it's in Lewis's Mercedes last year, then Lewis wins. Tao Pourchaire, yeah, I mean, he's probably going to finish 2nd in F2. He kind of, I think, Zandvoort was a very scruffy race, and it kind of illustrated that, Teo's had some poor luck this year, don't get me wrong. He's been mecha chromed a few times, but he's also made his fair share of errors. He's a very exciting driver going forward. You've got to think that in 5 years' time, will Tao Pourchaire be on the F1 grid? Probably. He's showing everything that he kind of needs to show, and exciting. Joe, yeah, Joe's is Joe confirmed? He's still not technically confirmed, is he? But Joe's going to carry on, and I think he deserves it. Like, he's, when the Alfa Romeo has actually finished a race, he's usually done okay. He's quite far off Valtteri at the start of the season, but he's definitely closed that gap. And I've been impressed with Joe, actually. I was definitely guilty of lumping him in with, he's only there because of the money, which obviously helped because of the backing that he brings, being the first Chinese driver in Formula 1. But actually, you know what? He's delivered on above my expectations, so credit to him. He's done a really good job. Giovinazzi. Yeah, Giovinazzi. I could see it. I could see Giovinazzi at Haas. I really could, because he's got the experience. The Ferrari connection is strong. Ferrari clearly, he is by far and away the best kind of, when we're talking like Italian prospects in the formulas anyway. I'm sure there's, some good up and coming young Italian drivers, but right now, like, Giovinazzi is kind of the main one, at least in the formulas. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Giovinazzi If I had to bet on it, I would bet it would be Giovinazzi, Magnussen at Haas next year, which I know isn't that exciting, but I think with Haas's considerations that they're clearly making here, I wouldn't be surprised if Gio came back, to be honest. And give him a second go at it alongside a teammate that Raikkonen was never the driver he once was, but it'll be interesting to see him up against K-Mag for sure. What else? What else we got? Yeah, I didn't realise that. Yeah, Guan Yu, Giovinazzi. What do you think of Dennis Howard? Does he see the potential? Yeah, he's had his moments, Howard. It's just not been consistent. And I think when you're in a Prema, like the expectations are that you're going to be kind of fighting up there. And credit to MP for giving Drogovic the car that he's been able to fight with, because he clearly works really well with that team. And as much as it is a spec series F2, I don't think F2 is, from things I've heard about engines and like blah blah blah, I don't think it's as much of a spec series as it should be. It should be more even, but it isn't, because some teams are just better than others, and money does help as well. Doohan, Jack Doohan's an interesting one, isn't he? Because we haven't really talked about Alpine, the whole Alpine. It's just, we've already talked about it, haven't we? Like the Alpine, just it's not going to get resolved, I think, anytime soon. But I think obviously Jack Doohan, so originally, and this is confirmed, that Piastri was going to go to Williams. That was the plan. So the whole Piastri defect into McLaren not only, obviously upset Alpine, but I reckon Williams were probably a bit bummed by it all as well, because they were going to get Piastri. That's confirmed. So, I just think that Doohan's really switched it on this tail end of the season, and it's his rookie year as well, which is to be expected, right? If you're a rookie, you're going to take a few races to get used to it, and then he's kind of, the levels have been really good. One in Spa, his quality's been really good. Yeah, I mean, I think Doohan's maybe a potential for Williams if other things don't fall into place. So if they can't give the seat to Sargent, for example, and they lose out on De Vries, and Schumacher doesn't leave, then maybe Doohan. But again, there's so many things that just I think we won't see much for a while, and then the pieces will start to fall. Secretly, I'm trying to jinx it, but don't tell anyone. But yeah, thoughts on F1 Manager? Very good. I might actually play it later today. So if you haven't, I'm on Twitch, by the way. Some of you don't know I'm on Twitch, but twitch.tv/Tommo live, or Tom Olive, as many like to call me. Yeah, I'm very good at jinxing, so hopefully if I say that announcements aren't going to happen, then they will, because they're definitely not. I'm absolutely certain there's going to be zero driver news in the next week. I'm 100% certain of that. Come on, the jinx. Why not stream it here? Well, I'm not going to stream it. I'm not going to stream gaming stuff on this channel, because it's gaming. It's different. But also, yeah, it's good to have a presence on other platforms. What about Binotto? Will he keep his job? But Binotto has helped develop a fantastic car. You can't doubt the quality of that Ferrari car. But I just don't think he should be in charge of the team. Keep him in charge of the car, because he's great at that. But I don't think, I just don't think he's in the right place at that team. Yeah, De Vries to AlphaTauri is a weird one, isn't it? But again, I think if that was to happen, that does showcase a change in Red Bull's approach to AlphaTauri, because right now, AlphaTauri are a team in their own right, and they've got Yuki, who would be going into his third year at the team. They could, if they wanted to, they could chuck a Liam Lawson in. They could chuck in an Iwasa, a Darivala. They could chuck in one of their juniors if they wanted to, because A few of them have got enough points. Hauger maybe, but they're looking at De Vries, a driver he's still young. That's the thing. Like, 27 isn't old. Let's not get it twisted, but it's not the typical route that they've gone with. You know, they've gone with very junior drivers in the past. But then also you had, like, the Sebastian Bourdais days, they got him from like Champ Car, I think. I did say Daruvala, yes. That's how you pronounce it, isn't it? It's Daruvala, not Daruvala, I think. Anyway, there's a few super chats that I missed, so I'm going to quickly go, and hopefully you're still here if you super chatted earlier. I do apologise for missing. Thank you, the Terseverse, for the rupees. Appreciate it. Why is Ricciardo not in the conversation anymore? Good question. This whole stream not even mentioned Ricciardo once. Not once. I'm gonna do a poll. The poll: will Daniel Ricciardo have a seat in 2023? Because it feels to me like the answer is increasingly likely to be no. And 83% straight away of the 200 you've already voted saying no. How do you solve a problem like Daniel Ricciardo and his 2022 seat? 2023 seat, sorry. The thing is, right, Daniel can take a year out and then reevaluate options for 2024. The problem is that he'd be leaving on a low, which is never a good thing. If you leave the sport on a low, yeah, when he left Red Bull, you know, he was in demand. Renault, sorry, at the time, chucked loads of money at him, and he did a really good job at Renault. Given that car, he was sort of fifth in the driver's standings in 2020. You know, up there with Checo in terms of driver of the season candidates. Did an unreal job. And then goes to McLaren, and he will have had two bad seasons in F1, and it's the two most recent seasons. And other than that, his F1 career has been pretty, you know, held his own against Max. He got beaten by Kvyat, sure. Kvyat was good. I wouldn't read into that too much, personally, but leaving on a low is a problem. If I'm Daniel Ricciardo, I think I want to ask you lot. 82% of you said he won't have a seat. Right, another poll. I've got another poll coming. What are you doing if you're Danny Rick? So you're taking a year out to reevaluate options for 2024. Are you pursue Williams? Do you pursue Haas? Or do you pursue... Am I even going to put Alpine in there? Because it feels like Alpine's not even really a choice. I'm just going to put other. So I can only do 4 responses in the poll. So if you think Alpine, if you think just retire, put it in other, I guess. I think... I don't know. Because there's been talk, hasn't there, about Ricciardo going to Mercedes as a reserve, like Bailey said. And David. A few of you have. AJ as well. Which... And I guess the idea for that is that, you know, he wants to replace Lewis when Lewis retires. and that would give... He's playing the long game on that one, and then that would give Mercedes enough knowledge on Daniel to know whether he'd be able to fill the shoes of Lewis Hamilton. Hello, Sava. Good to see you, mate. Safety car drive. Burnt Mylander out, Ricciardo in. NASCAR or IndyCar. 36% of you saying year out. 28% of you have said other. 23% Haas. 13% Williams. I would love it if he went to Williams, because that would just be like, it's like two of my favorite driver, and like Daniel's right up there with like Ocon and Norris, and like I love Daniel, of course I do. Come on, but would Williams be able to get that car competitive quickly enough? And also, like, Ricciardo can't now. Ricciardo cannot demand a high wage now. He just can't. He just can't do that. And I worry about him taking a year out when he's coming off of a bad year. You know? That's why, like, that's why I think Albon had to kind of settle with the Williams seat. I think we're seeing now a driver that he's clearly merits like at least a midfield seat. I think Alex can, but because he had such a bad time at Red Bull, even though it was against Verstappen, leaving on a down note is always going to limit your options coming back. So I do worry if Daniel takes a year out, then he's not going to see a way back in. That would be my big concern of him taking a year out. So if I'm Daniel Ricciardo, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe Haas or Williams, pay cut, because he's like, listen, the man's stacked, all right? He got huge pay from Renault, got a massive wage from McLaren as well, and the payoff to leave a year early. Like, he needs to, like, he's got the money. I think he just needs to stay in the sport. And I'd love to see him at Williams. And I think if the opportunity at Williams came, they'd be silly to not entertain it. But also, like, you know, each contract is negotiated on a... Yeah, like, if Daniel wants to stay in the sport, he needs to kind of swallow the pride and take the pay cut and just take what you can get. I'd love to see him at Williams, but I just can't see it happening. So yeah, Dan's 33 as well. So he's not like, you know, what you look at average retirement age for F1 drivers is like 35, between like 35 maybe 37, that kind of range. I mean, Nico Rosberg retired at 31. I think take the cut and just get in a seat. Maybe it's Williams, maybe it's Haas. That's what I would do if I was Daniel. I'd just be like, look, I want to drive for you. I want to work on this project. I think I'd find Williams more exciting, maybe. But I'm probably biased because I really like Williams and Albon's already there. So, and then if not, yeah, maybe just go back to V8 Supercars. Not back to. He's never raced in V8 Supercars, but that'd be cool. IndyCar would be sick for Daniel, but I don't want to see him leave. But I'm struggling to think how he stays in the sport, you know. But yeah, I guess we'll see, won't we? Right. You know what? I think we're done. So while you lot say bye in chat, I will go and grab a certain sausage dog because you've all been very patient. So I'll go get him now. All right. Give me a sec. Very sleepy. Oh, sorry, Max. I'll check for super chats. Here he is. It's been a kip in the bed, haven't you? Hey. Yeah, if you saw my latest video, which if you haven't, go and watch after this. We were looking after another sausage dog, Ollie, weren't we? And you were knackered because you were just playing the whole time, and you kept trying to hump him, which is bad. Thank you, Ernie. Menton. Who's Menton? But thank you, Ernie, for the £2. Thank you, Martin. Daniel to Andretti. What, Andretti in IndyCar or Andretti in F1? I mean, Andretti in F1 would still be a vibe. That would be sick. But Melton. Minton. Look at how tired he is. Why are you so tired, mate? Because of that light? My key light's quite bright. Thank you, Max, for the $2 mate. Appreciate it. Will we get an 11th team in the next 5 years? Well, obviously, yeah. Andretti is a team that's been chatting a lot. It looks like Audi's going to take over Sauber. Porsche are maybe still interested, but a new team from scratch is always going to be difficult because you have to. The sport where it's, I guess, with the cost cap, I think the cost cap makes it more viable for sure. But it's mad to look at the where the Mercedes factory. It was Mercedes, then it was Braun before that, it was Honda before that. Before it was like a composite, like Reynard's composites or something, and it's like split out loads of buildings. Like the infrastructure you need to start an F1 team is huge, and you've got to pay a 200 entry fee, 200 mil, which I think's nonsense because I think just make F1's getting enough money coming in now from Vegas and all that to make the pie bigger. Why can't the pie just be bigger so that the teams don't miss out? Because the teams are always going to act in their own best interest. Look at him. This dog. The dog is in REM sleep. Look at him. I can't believe how tired he is. Look at it. Mad. Yeah, I'd love to see more teams for sure. 12 teams would be great. 12 teams, 22 races, a more concise calendar where we're not travelling as much. Team personnel allowed to alternate, able to alternate within the cost cap. Do those things and I would be pretty happy. Hold the twos, mate. 12 Mintons would be hectic. Look at him. Look at him. Hang on. Let's zoom in on the dog. It's my big forehead. Look at him. Look at him. Hello. Are you a sleepy boy? What a cutie. Right, okay. Anyway, I think that's all the super chats done. Yeah, we're finished. Yes, Sava, exactly. I will see you all Thursday for let me just sort out this screen. For the pre-race Chinners for the 2022 Singapore Grand Prix. Yeah, he does want to go back to bed, doesn't he? So yeah, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for making this pretty dream job possible. Got some scripting to do today actually. As Hannah's away this weekend, I'm going to put this time to work because I like working. I love what I do, and I wouldn't be able to do it without you lot watching and supporting me. So honestly, thank you so much. But yeah, cheers everyone. Goodbye, Jake, Flying Potato, Democracy Smith, hello Alpine, TMR7, Josiah Daniel, Mr. 28 Lavish, Bang Conky, that's an interesting name, Luther, member for 14 months, big up, Tom, Ethan, Axeli, Dave, Sava, as always, Joel, Hannah, Hello. Who said Tara, Arthur, VX, Tom, Unfunny Memes, Jared, Fishman, Jake from Straya. Big up the Aussies. Up the Demons. MIAFL team. Deal with it. Talesh, Zhaosong, Go, Lager, Uma, Viraj, Hongyang, Jared, Ananda. Right, I'm actually done now. Cheers, everyone. Bye. Bye.